And we are back, this time picking it up with interpersonal and team skills. Conflict management, right? First, we try and avoid conflict. Of course we do, right? And we can do that by making sure we have clear roles and responsibilities. In general, following good PM practices, planning our communications and setting ground rules like the team charter we discussed. Now, even if we do that, let's be honest, conflict seems inevitable. So, as project managers, we want to use it as an opportunity. So first of all, just be aware there are sources of conflict, some of which the PMBOK guide mentions, but others revealed via studies, right? I would have always thought that personal opinion or personalities were the biggest source of conflict, but they're not. It's your schedule. It's the priorities of the work that needs to be done. It's the resource availability and technical opinions. Have you ever heard two technical people get into a discussion? Holy mackerel. Yes, it happens. So the conflict as a project manager is best resolved by those at that lower level, right? Let them resolve it. Unless it's impacting the project or is a legal issue, let them solve their issues, okay, is my advice. Now, when you're dealing with conflict then, it is sometimes helpful to understand that there are tools available to you, such as compromising, withdrawing, smoothing, collaborating, confronting, or forcing. Confronting is really the best. It's a way, in a professional, mature way, to get to root cause. That's why it's win-win. Collaborating is also good. That's about problem solving, as long as you get to win-win, to root cause. Forcing, directing is usually not very good. In fact, it's a win-lose. The boss wins, you lose. In the end, we all lose, right? Compromising is generally seen as lose-lose. This slide is fairly self-explanatory, so enjoy it. But these are some approaches you can take along the way. Now, as you're doing that, realize that you need to use your good emotional IQ to, as it says in the center here, reduce tensions, increase cooperation, and keep stakeholders open to our efforts. It's a balance. You are always balancing the technical, the leadership, the managerial by using your interpersonal skills. And then finally, realize as a project manager, finally in these series of slides, that as a project manager, you have power. And it comes in various forms. Sometimes it's formal, like your position power, which can often come with reward or penalty power. Everybody loves a reward. Nobody loves to be punished, but sometimes you have to. Expert power is also a very real thing. We all know that guy or girl that we see as just, they have the answer. They've been around, they know the technology, they're smart, they're approachable. A referent power is also very real. Informational and financial. The bottom line is that as a project manager, a PM has some power. We have to figure what that is and leverage it in the organizational type that we're in, whether it's functional, projectized, or matrix. Now, we are going to talk about the stages of team development, okay? I know we already talked about it a little bit, but I just wanted to touch on it some more for your benefit. So the team development takes time, is my point. And frequently, it's going to follow these sort of recognizable stages from being a group of strangers to becoming a united team with a common goal, right? And so Bruce Tuckman, he's a researcher. He worked through what he sees as these 4 stages, and of course I add adjoining to them. We have discussed them, so I'll just move on, but I wanted to share them with you. Now, the 4 stages, stage 1 includes forming, right? And in a little deeper dive, it brings the group together, right? You want to keep ideas simple. You want to say acceptable things at this point. You want to avoid controversy. and serious topics up front. And if sharing feelings, keep feedback to a minimum. Avoid real disclosures, right? So you might, at this point, begin this team charter, the mission, goals. Let people have buy-in and input. Establish boundaries and expectations early, and select non-conflict tasks to work towards as some quick wins, initial successes. Now, in the storming section, you can do the same. There will be strong views develop, ideas get challenged. People will express or use poor listening skills, right? So look for those. There will be a challenge to authority, and some members are just going to withdraw. You might see a lack of collaboration then at this point as a sign or symptom that you're in storming. And basically, it's a lot of defensiveness. So we want to communicate, no surprises, accept tension as normal, acknowledge accomplishments, value diversity, and lead as we gather information. The next stage was norming, right? And so we begin to see each other as alike, right? And so we want to use active listening. We want to share leadership. We want to be receptive to others' ideas. That active participation here is very important, right? And again, conflicts now get resolved with a win-win versus a win-lose type scenario, right? So again, recognizing that we're all alike, that some are going to need training, let's get them that. Encourage them to be comfortable and to stay focused on the goal. Finally, the fourth stage is performing, right? And so this is generally a high creativity area where people have an openness to each other and trust is developed. Leadership is shared, relationships are strong, and feelings of warmth and acceptance have evolved. The leader should ask for critical self-assessment and look for ways to challenge ideas and develop them and encourage openness. Now, with that, I want to move to inspiring and influence, right? So the law of reciprocity is similar to the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so it's vital when it comes to influence and persuasion. Interpersonal relationships have a reciprocal quality about them. We are inherently wired to keep the scales of fairness balanced, I think. So while some may be more sensitive to how much is being put on their scales, when do you do something for somebody else? Most people would just feel compelled to reciprocate. So keep in mind this law of reciprocity, right? So we often use it, but only in a negative way. So for example, there's someone who we don't quite trust. So when we interact with that person, we're likely to communicate our suspicions through verbal or nonverbal behavior, right? Such as unwarranted questioning or furrowing our brow or a skeptical tone of voice. And so the more the other person detects this untrusting behavior, the more uncomfortable they're going to feel with us and not fully disclose things, right? And so the real question that we want to keep up or keep at that will keep us awake at night. And I've said that before. What keeps you awake at night, right? Is from a popular movie of The Matrix, and that is, would you have broken the vase if I hadn't said anything? So in other words, if we treated the other person as though they were trustworthy, would they have behaved in a more trustworthy manner, right? And so although there's an element of risk involved in this, we can predict and achieve positive results by trying to leverage expectations and using reciprocal relationships, right? So we want to make sure that we have influence currencies, right? As Alan Cohen remarked, influence by exchange is about giving what the other person wants in return for what you need, right? We do influence currencies at work, whether we realize it or not. If we realize it, we will have more currency available to us, right? And we want to avoid self-created influence barriers, right? So self-created influence barriers means not assuming the other person is an ally, clarifying your goals and priorities, diagnosing and accepting others' currencies, assessing your own resources relative to what the ally wants, and diagnosing your relationship with them, right? So as it is said, very often we are our own worst enemy, as we foolishly build stumbling blocks on the path that leads to success and happiness. So one of the barriers, not assuming the other person is a potential ally, right? This is an attribution error that's often made in the process. So an attribution error is the process of inferring the causes of events or behaviors. So in real life, attribution is something we do every day, usually without even an awareness of this underlying process or the bias that leads to our own interference. So for example, when you get a poor grade on a quiz, you might blame the teacher for not adequately explaining the material. We know that's not true. Oh, sorry, that was a personal bias. I was just kidding. But when we get a bad grade, we might blame the teacher, right? Completely missing the fact that we didn't study, right? So when a classmate gets a great grade on the same quiz, you might attribute their work to luck, and that would be neglecting the fact that maybe their study habits are very good, right? So types of attribution include interpersonal attribution, right? When telling a story to a group of friends, you are likely to tell the story in a way that places you in the best possible light. There's predictive attribution. So we also tend to attribute things in a way that allows us to make future predictions. So if your car is vandalized, you might attribute the crime to the fact that you parked in a particular parking garage. As a result, you're going to avoid that parking garage in the future to avoid vandalism. Now, another barrier is not clarifying goals and priorities, right? So what we do, we build a long list of what we want, and that only causes overload and sometimes distance, right? We mix together personal and organizational objectives. There's there are intense personal needs that confuse the other's ability to see our true intentions, right? I'm right, I'll show you, respect me, for example. When what we should do is identify the primary goals and separate them from less important ones, right? Ask yourself, is that helpful, right, in your agenda approach? And be as flexible as possible. Now, another barrier is not diagnosing or accepting another's currency. Okay, so what are currencies, right? These are always known as the goods and services of exchange. Today it's the dollar. Sometimes it's gold, right? It just depends. So making trades for what we want in return for what others want is what currency is about. So if you have nothing the other person values, you really have nothing to exchange, right? So we want to have something of value to exchange. All right. I am going to pause there, and we'll come back with influences to those currencies and barrier number 4 and 5, and then continue with motivating project teams.